With us now, the Speaker of the House, no doubt to answer all of that, Mike Johnson, kind enough to join us out of Washington. Mr. Speaker, very good to have you.
Hey, Neil, great to be with you.
What did you think of what the Secretary was saying? This is all on you and your fellow Republicans. You botched that bipartisan measure. It looked like a sure thing. He says Donald Trump stopped you. This is why the president had to step in and take matters into his own hands. You say?
What I say is this is exactly why we had to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. He has a serious problem with the truth. What he's saying is comical. He just said that the Republicans didn't act. We passed H.R. 2, the most secure border measure in the history of Congress, 14 months ago. It is still sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk in the Senate right now. That would have actually fixed the problem. Mayorkas
But there were no
with
Democratic votes for that, right, sir?
There were not, and that's the point. If they wanted to secure the border, they could have. But, Neil, that's the very issue here. The president and Mayorkas engineered the open border. They did it intentionally. They began on the first day of the Biden administration with his executive orders. We documented 64 specific executive actions that Biden and Mayorkas took to open that border wide, to put out the welcome mat and invite everybody to come in. And you know who's come in. Many dangerous people. We have known terrorists on the watch list. We have criminals from prisons that have been emptied out in Central America. We have gang members and cartel members and everybody else. And now the secretary or the director of the FBI has testified for the fourth time to Congress that all the red lights are flashing, meaning that we're in serious danger on the homeland now because they have allowed all these dangerous elements to come into our country. It's maddening. They should have closed it on day one, but they kept it open this long because they wanted to, and everybody knows that.
You know, both the president and the secretary, as you know, Speaker, have said if Republicans weren't kowtowing to Donald Trump or sucking up to him or doing his bidding, we wouldn't be where we are right now. That measure or some version of it would have passed, and this hullabaloo over what the president's doing with these executive actions would be a moot point. What do you say?
They never sent a bill over from the Senate. It couldn't pass in the Senate because it was a half measure. It wouldn't have solved the problem. Neil, January 3rd of this year, I took 64 House Republicans down to the border. It's the largest contingency of members of Congress that had ever been to the border. We went to Eagle Pass, which was the epicenter of all the problems. And they told us there, the Border Patrol agents themselves told us, 33-year veteran of the agency, who was the deputy of the agency, told us that the problem is the Remain in Mexico. If you reinstated Remain in Mexico policy that President Trump did, you would stop the illegal flow by 70%. That was the clear admission of the people there on the ground, and that was the advice that I delivered to President Biden myself. He refused to do it. If he really wanted to solve the border, Neil, he could close the border entirely. But this half-measure executive order he just did actually exacerbates the problem. He's allowing thousands of people over the border every day before they just begin to enforce existing federal immigration law. It makes no sense, and everyone wants to know around the country why would they do that? Because they want to turn these people into voters. That's the only thing, the only rational explanation for what they've done.
All right, they say that's not the point, but you're right. It is politics here, and both sides argue strongly for their views. But, Speaker, I did want to get your the latest on these criminal referrals you are recommending for Hunter Biden and James Biden. You had said that their false testimony to the U.S. Congress is a felony. And Chairman Comer, Smith, Dorton have all compiled the evidence. They say that these false statements directly relate to the president's involvement in his family's foreign influence peddling. Now, to this day and moment, the president and his people say that is not the case, and you're pushing something you know is wrong. What do you say?
Well, listen, these are clear violations of federal law, and this is an opportunity for Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, to prove. If he wants to demonstrate that there's not a two-tiered system of justice, then they need to use the mechanisms, the appropriate steps that the Department of Justice should take in a case like this. You have 3 committees of jurisdiction in Congress who have done a long, methodical investigation, impeachment inquiry, and these are the facts that they have uncovered. They have laid out the examples, and they are presenting this squarely to the Attorney General, which is our constitutional responsibility in the House. We have oversight responsibility. We're using it. And we are charged with impeachment investigations. They've used that. And now you take it to the next logical and important step, and the ball is now in the court of the Attorney General. He just testified here just this week that he doesn't want to show that there's a two-tiered system of justice. Well, he has an opportunity now to prove it to the American people, and we'll see what step he takes.
There's a sort of a pessimism that begins to develop, Speaker, that both sides are just playing this political game, a tit-for-tat game. What comes to mind is some of these actions that you have led post the Donald Trump convictions, where conservatives want a floor vote on a bill that would allow current or former presidents to move any state case to a federal court. I know Jim Jordan has hinted at denying federal funding for state prosecutors investigating Donald Trump. Measures that probably won't go very far. So why do them?
Well, because we have a responsibility here. You know, Congress has very particular duties under the Constitution. We have the responsibility of oversight, and that's what we've been engaging in. We have the responsibility to legislate and to appropriate. And when you're talking about funding for rogue prosecutors and offices like Alvin Bragg, who by some estimates, our early estimates, he received almost $1 million of federal taxpayer funds in the last year. To do what? To have politicized prosecutions of a political opponent of his party? He ran on that. That was the premise of his election to district attorney.
No, I certainly understand where you're coming from, Mr. Speaker, but Are you weaponizing the House the same way you say Democrats were weaponizing the DOJ to get what they wanted? Are you just doing it in a bigger platform, the entire House of Representatives?
No, there is a very clear distinction between what we are doing and what they have done in weaponizing the judicial system. They're undermining the people's faith in our institutions, our system of justice itself. What we're doing, Neil, is the opposite. We are trying to adhere to the rule of law. We are trying to use the authority and the responsibility that we have in Congress to ensure that people can trust our justice system. It's absolutely essential to maintain a constitutional republic, and they are undermining the public's faith in that. We are here to hold the line and say, no, the rule of law has to be adhered to, and we can't have rogue prosecutors using our courts for political vendettas, and that's exactly what they're doing to Donald Trump. And I can tell you that people around this country see that clearly. I've traveled now to done events in 123 cities in 29 states in the last 6.5 months. Everywhere I go, Neil, east, west, north, south, it's the same. There's an energy out there because people are fed up with this, and they see that the Democrats and the far left have pushed this pendulum too far. It's going to begin to swing back, and we have to do our job here in Congress to assist with that, to hold these people accountable, and to ensure that the law is being adhered to. That's the effort that you'll see play out here in the coming weeks.
Some in your party, sir, are worried about where this is going. Larry Hogan, the front-running candidate for the Maryland Senate seat, who wants to flip a blue seat, turn it red. He had said at this dangerously divided moment in our history, all leaders, regardless of party, must not pour fuel on the fire with more toxic partisanship. Do you call this toxic partisanship?
No, I genuinely believe, Neil, that it's the opposite. Adherence to the rule of law is a core principle in our constitutional republic, our unique system of government, this grand experiment in self-governance. July 4th will turn 248 years old as a nation, and we don't know how long this grand experiment can last, but one of the things that must be maintained is equal justice under law, is a fair system. We're not politicizing it. We're trying to return to that core principle because it's necessary for us to maintain our system of government. There's nothing less than that at stake here, and that's why this is so serious. I don't disagree with the idea that we're hopelessly divided right now, but I do think that we can get back to some sanity if we adhere to the Constitution and those core principles. That's what we're trying to advance here every day. This is not politics. This is the opposite of that.
What did you think when Larry Trump, the co-chair of the RNC, had said of Larry Hogan's remarks that he doesn't deserve the respect of anyone? He should have thought long and hard before he said that publicly. Others in your party have claimed that goes a little too far, that if you're not in lockstep with Donald Trump, you're not in lockstep with the party. What did you make of that?
Well, Laura is helping to run the RNC right now, and I'm in charge of the House of Representatives, and I'm trying to steer this ship of state in a steady manner.
Well, I'm
and
sure
that
you are,
means
but I would assume
Yeah.
you'd like a Republican Senate. I know you're the House, you're the big boss there, but I mean, she seems to be against advocating for someone who could flip a blue Senate seat red and maybe take control of the Senate. Do you think that's wise?
Well, listen, I'll tell you where we're headed right now. We're headed for a great November for the Republican Party. Donald Trump is going to be reelected president. We are going to flip the Senate back to the Republican Party, a Republican majority, and we're going to keep and grow the House majority. We have polling from organizations across the spectrum that are indicating that now because they're reading what is happening out there in the country. Neil, people are fed up with the cost of living, the rising crime, with the open border, with the weakness that we're projecting on the world stage. They do not feel secure right now because of the leadership out of the White House and Chuck Schumer and the Democrats who have stopped all of our legislation in the Senate. We have to return to this sanity in Washington, and I'm optimistic that we can. I think we can, and I think we're headed for a great November. We'll be able to turn this thing around.
We'll watch very closely. Mr. Speaker, very good having you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Neil. Good to be with you as always.
The Speaker of the House.